As a nutritional advisor, I talk a lot about reducing how much sugar you eat. And that's because I know that insulin is key to a lot of our health problems. And in particular, if your body becomes insulin resistant, then all sorts of health problems can ensue. But if you want to reduce your sugar intake, you might start thinking, well, I'll look for alternatives in artificial sweeteners. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, the pros and cons of those artificial sweeteners. What we've got to remember is that, of course, artificial sweeteners are just that. They are artificial chemicals that you're using instead of normal sugar, which is usually sucrose, which is two types of sugar, glucose and fructose. Now, I've talked before about fructose and it having a detrimental effect on your liver. If you're thinking about artificial sweeteners as a health alternative, because then you're not getting the glucose or the fructose element, you've got to then look at the health implications of those artificial sweeteners, haven't you? You've got to know that there's not been a lot of studies into the long-term effects of artificial sweeteners. They're approved by our regulatory systems, our Food Standards Agency in the UK, for safety aspects, but they haven't been looked at in terms of long-term health. The food industry is not forced to look into these things, and therefore they don't want to spend the money. Studies are very expensive, and so they won't do those off their own back because they just simply don't have to. There's been quite a lot of research into whether artificial sweeteners make an impact on our blood sugar, and that's the bit that I'm most interested in. Are there certain types of artificial sweetener that raise our blood sugar in exactly the same way as sugar does? Then that's a problem, because it's fine that they have no calories, and calories is a whole other subject, but 0 calories doesn't mean there's 0 effect on your blood sugar levels. And if you've got a high blood sugar level, obviously then you're going to get the impact of the insulin level. And that's the bit that I'm always banging on about, because you don't want your insulin rising in your body and then becoming a problem for your cells, because then we get a cascade of ill health, and that's what you want to avoid. They have found certain types of artificial sweetener do increase your blood sugar and your insulin response. One study found that by drinking just 1 diet drink per day, it increased the person's risk of metabolic syndrome by 36%. Metabolic syndrome puts you at increased risk of stroke, heart disease, cancer and diabetes. That's something you definitely don't want to have. The same study found that it increased the person's risk of type 2 diabetes by a whopping 67%. Aspartame is one of those sweeteners that you've definitely heard of. It's been around for about 30 years and it's had a pretty checkered history. A lot of people believe it to be seriously detrimental to health, and some people think nothing of it. And unfortunately, there isn't total evidence to tell us one way or the other if it does cause the things that have caused headlines. So at the moment, the jury is out as to whether it is as detrimental as they say, but they have worked out that it does have exactly the same effect on blood sugar levels. So when it's consumed with a meal, it behaves in exactly the same way as normal sugar does. That means it is increasing your blood sugar levels and your insulin response. So pretty much, there you go, we don't want to be eating that. Sugar alcohols, such as xylitol and sorbitol, are non-absorbed sweeteners, which sounds pretty good. But the downside is that they've been shown to cause gastrointestinal distress. Gastrointestinal distress is bloating and diarrhea, so not so good after all. So what about the sweeteners we use in the low carb world? The keto friendly sweeteners are things like stevia, erythritol and monk fruit extract. Monk fruit extract is a good alternative, except in the UK it is very, very hard to get hold of. In fact, I've not found one yet that hasn't been cut with other sweeteners, and so I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. Pure stevia has a very bitter aftertaste and it's quite tricky to use in cooking. I've tried that, I've researched all of these different things, but I can't get on with it. It's got, as I say, an aftertaste that is unacceptable. The stevia that you buy, again in packaged form in the UK, has been cut with other artificial sweeteners. And then there's erythritol, which is another sugar alcohol, and it's a good alternative in that it doesn't raise your insulin levels, but I cannot get on with the taste of it and the sort of after cooling feeling that you have in your mouth. It just doesn't work for me. A lot of people it affects their mouths. I would say I do have a reaction to it, and so therefore why would I eat it? Doing research for this video, I came across a new type of sweetener called allulose. Allulose is a rare type of sugar found in few fruits such as kiwis, raisins and figs. And this one doesn't have an impact on insulin levels. So this sounds pretty good so far. It's also been shown that it doesn't have an impact on the liver, which is great, and it doesn't have an impact on weight gain. So it is, again, 0 calories, it's 0 carbs, so it's looking pretty good, and you can get it in the UK. So I have ordered some, and I will come back and talk about this after I've used it, just to see if it's any good. In conclusion, about all of these different types of artificial sweetener, is the fact that your body was not designed to eat large amounts of sugar. It was not designed to consume large amounts of chemicals masquerading as sugar either. It keeps you in that craving, sweet-toothed loop that's probably driving the health problems that you may be experiencing. And remember, the one thing that you do not want to have is insulin resistance. And if you are carrying extra weight around your middle, or you have any type of ill health whatsoever, even the smallest niggle, you are probably heading for insulin resistance, if not already have it. And it's time to reverse it. I hope that helps. And if you have any questions at all, just give me a shout and I'll give you more information if you need it.